Hello and welcome to Fireside Chat.
Dan O'Connor is our guest, and this is the Fireside Chat. My name is Dennis. I'm the host. My son is the co-host, Terry.
Hello there.
And anyhow, Dan, you drove over from Newhall area, and we're glad you made it.
And I picked a beautiful day. It was a little clear down below before I crested the grapevine, but once I got in the valley, the fog increased. But once I got to Lindsay, the sky opened up, and it's great to be here.
All right. I understand you like the hobby of the ham radios and working on radios and stuff. What got you interested in that, and how long have you been interested in that, Dan?
Ever since I was about 9 or 10 years old, when I discovered that you could buy a crystal, or get your parents to buy you a crystal, piece of crystal galena, and with the efforts of an oatmeal box and a copper wire, you could actually build yourself a radio and hear the local AM radio stations. In my case, it was KGIL and KMPC in the Central Valley, where I grew up, and that started me the interest in the magic communications of the invisible radio communications, and the curiosity as to how it worked, and ventured me on later on in life. Actually, around age, I think it was around age 14, I discovered rock and roll, and I had a nice radio receiver, and I was starting to listen to distant rock and roll stations from around the Midwest and Northern California, which, and after, I believe it was age 20, around age 25, I got back into amateur radio, and I really had fun.
Yeah, and you talked about radio stations, and while I'm on this subject, I remember a station over towards Los Angeles. I guess finally it was out of Baja, Mexico. It's the Wolfman Jack show that came on. It was the mighty 1090 on the dial. And I talked to the FCC once about that station, the one over in Mexico or Baja, California. They said that station works the principle of using a pencil beam signal, and it goes all the way up the coast of California, all the way up to Oregon, into Washington, and who knows where else. But it was quite a powerhouse station, and it's still on the air, but what's happening, they've changed their format. It's all Spanish now.
I remember the mighty 690 over there. It's out of around the same area some years back, a similar type of AM station, and that was a popular one way back in the day.
Well, I also remember XPRS. Was that possibly another alternative station in part of the group?
I think it was also the 1090. It used to be XERB, then it turned into XPRS. Boy, everybody just waited for that radio station, that Wolfman Jack, to listen to his thing. And he acted like he was getting on the phone and calling his girls up and his friends. And they've made some movies with that guy. And he's passed now, but he had some specials. American Graffiti.
That's right.
He was on that. It was something.
Is it true they filmed part of that in Fresno or in Clovis? American Graffiti, I believe.
It could have. They could have filmed it out there. I'm not certain. I'm not sure on that. But golly, what a classic movie! I
was told that they filmed part of the scene where they hook up a hook on the police car's axle and they drive off and it goes down, and it was I'm told it was in Clovis, which is really.
I hope that was staged. I hope that really didn't happen, because if that was not supposed to be on there and somebody actually took a chance at it, but what a show! I mean.
Well, and back to more interesting matters. At times you've tinkered with radios, and you have a lot of experience and know-how with that. I'm sure you have some interesting stories. Tell us when you've experimented with them. Has anything ever unexpectedly happened? Something that you didn't plan on, like I don't know, something like interesting.
Well, most immediate to mind comes to mind is the knock on the door from a neighbor when I first began to experiment with transmitters, and I was heard on more than one TV station
Wow.
for a few weeks until I realized that I was having a problem. I didn't have a proper filtering in the transmitter, and that was a surprise though, but it was a lesson at the same time. It was a learning experience.
I'm just curious on what band you were on when you experimented. Was it a pirate station by some reason, by some chance?
I believe it was a 40-meter CW transmitter that was really dirty.
And the 40 meters, if we could go on to explain, that's a ham frequency. So with the license, it's perfectly legal and everything's on the legit. There's no problem at all. And you're a technician anyway. You're qualified to work on stuff like that.
Well, back then I was new to all, and I realized later on in life I realized that 40 meters being 7 megahertz was 1/3 of 21 megahertz, which happened to be a very popular intermediate frequency in the older television sets back in the 50s, and that's one reason that I had a real problem with my neighbors at the time, but it worked out.
Well, and to let the viewing audience know, Dan and my dad are radio ham operators, and they have quite a bit of accumulated experience with that sort of thing, that knowledge in ham radios and technical radio knowledge in general, just to let the viewing audience know. Go ahead, Dad.
A ham radio operator is an amateur license holder. Not to be gee, I'm getting tongue-tied. Thank goodness for editing. We can cut all these boo-boos out of here. But not to be confused with citizens band. Now, CB is another way to communicate with two-way radios. But actually, we try to think of amateur radio as a step above, maybe, just a little bit anyhow.
Yes,
we can
definitely a step above.
Legally work the world. It's a lot of fun, and technology has come a long, long ways. It wasn't that many years ago where...
Yes, communications have changed. Go ahead, yes. Yes, indeed. It's gone digital and internet.
Interestingly enough, in the late 80s, when the space shuttle had flown over the LA Basin, I managed to very briefly talk with the astronaut from Enid, Oklahoma. I forget his call, right? W5LAID. Anyway, that was
that's an experience because
fun.
You're not the only amateur that would be making contact or attempting to talk to them. Actually, there's other amateur radio operators, and we give everybody turns at that. So it's an experience, and it's fun. There's no doubt about it. That's great to do that.
And then you have what's known as pirate radio, and that's a whole other subject entirely. But we don't want to get ourselves into too much hot water.
Can you expand on
Can you expand on that? It's interesting.
I've actually heard many pirate radio stations in the LA Basin, mainly on the FM band, where people will play music sometimes nonstop, and generally lasts for maybe a month, and until they get caught. FCC authorities usually take them off the air, but other successful ones that have been able to stay with it usually will go on a ship off the coast.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, 3 miles.
Well, you're talking to the choir here when we speak about pirate radio. I've tried a little piracy, something that I did before I knew any better. In other words, I built something up and was able to actually put a signal on the AM broadcast band at the top end of the dial. The trouble with going on the top end of the dial or the bottom end of the dial, that's just sending up a flag. It's kind of like, wow, the FCC would watch the band edges. So anyhow, we'll go. Okay.
Yes. Have you ever, when you were transmitting on some, have you ever heard some frequencies, unexpected frequencies that you received when you were tinkering? Or?
Well, I did. I heard the FBI.
Wow.
President Ford was in Palm Springs.
That's an interesting story. Go ahead, Dan.
I had a scanner, and I just happened to be listening on Desert Hot Springs area, and sure enough, it was security for President Ford around 19, I believe it was 1969, 70, somewhere in that era. That caught me totally off guard when I heard that. I'd never expected that.
That's amazing.
Well, and I guess it was something that you just stumbled upon, and then I guess you had to quickly tune out of there or get thoroughly questioned. I would imagine it would make me want to back off thoroughly and quickly.
Actually, there's really no log. It's what you receive.
Really?
It's what you.
Really?
It's what you do with it. If you
Okay.
take information, if you go to Radio Shack and buy a scanner, you're welcome to listen to it in your home. Although there are some ordinances against listening in a car in your mobile, but as long as you don't do anything with the information, it's out. It's on the airways. But if you do anything with it, if you advise anybody of what you hear, then that's a problem.
It was a pleasure having you here with us. And just as a reminder, please check in next Saturday for a brand new show. We encourage and appreciate any viewer comments. Remember, this is the Fireside Chat.